We're going to test the PCV system in this video, and the PCV stands for positive crankcase ventilation. What it does is the blow-by that gets past your piston rings goes down into the crankcase, and we have to relieve that pressure. Otherwise, pressure will build up inside the crankcase and it'll end up blowing your oil seals and different things like that. It could be detrimental to your engine. So what we're going to do is we're going to test the PCV valve in several different ways. And any of these ways is acceptable to test. But what the first test that we do is, first of all, we have to identify where the PCV system is and what kind of PCV system you have. If you have a PCV valve, that's going to be located in one of the valve covers usually. And so on this engine, this is the Pontiac engine, the PCV valve is actually located right here in the intake manifold, or sorry, in the valve cover. And if we take that valve out and shake it, I think you can hear that. You should be able to hear it rattle. And so that's the first test that you would do with a PCV valve. The PCV valve actually does come off of this piece right here, but you can just rattle it like that. You don't have to take it all the way off. And so that would be the first test that you do. Another test that you can do is with a manometer. I always call it an anemometer, and I've got an anemometer here, and I want to explain this tool for you real quick. So let me set up the camera. So this is an anemometer. It's got a magnet on the back, so I've just got it stuck to the front of the engine here. And what it is it's kind of, this one here is actually a really old tool, but what it is we've got a tube that comes down around like this, it loops around, and then you've got a valve mechanism up here at the top. And what happens is you fill this up with water, and how much pressure does it take to move that water 1 inch? That's inches of water. If you've heard the term inches of mercury, they use a similar type of gauge, only they fill this part up right here with mercury. And how much pressure does it take to move the mercury 1 inch? Now when you read this anemometer, you've got a sliding scale down here. So I'll zoom in here in a second so you can see it. But here's the 0 mark, and then going down I've got 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, and so forth. And up here I go all the way up to 6 inch. And so I've got my water level up here, so what I did is I just moved the water scale down to where it's level with the 0. And when the pressure moves, so if I was to apply pressure to this, you see how the pressure moves on it? Well, I'll zoom in so you can see it. So here, let me do that test again. Okay, I'm zoomed in a little bit, and what I want you to watch is watch the water right down here, this level, and I'm going to put just a small amount of pressure on it. I'm just going to do that with a vacuum pump. So you can see how the water moves, and so the way you read this scale is if the water moves down a 1/2 inch, you read both sides. So it's a 1/2 inch on this side, 1/2 inch on that side, so that's 1 inch of water. And same thing with mercury and stuff like that. So that's how you would set up this scale. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start the engine up, and then what I'm going to do is put the end of the tool right here, this vacuum piece that I've got on here, I'm going to stick that in the dipstick tube. So I've taken the oil dipstick out, and I'm going to put that in the dipstick tube, and it's going to measure the amount of pressure that's inside the crankcase. So I'm going to start the engine up. Okay, we'll do this again. I tried filming it, and I think I turned the camera off instead of turning it on. So I've got my anemometer set up. It's at 0 right here, so I've got it calibrated to 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this vacuum piece, the hose, and I'm going to put it in the dipstick tube. And there should be vacuum in the crankcase. And if there is vacuum in the crankcase, then you'll see that that water level move. So put the tool in the crankcase, or in the dipstick tube, and you can see that I'm measuring about 3/4 of an inch. So if you read on both sides of the scale, so I'm not quite a 1/2 inch here, not quite a 1/2 inch down on this side, so I'm going up on one side, down on the other side. So that is approximately not quite 1 inch of vacuum. Now if I was to disconnect the PCV valve, so if I pull the PCV valve out of the valve cover, you can see the pressure equalizes. So the PCV system is working, and that's how you would test it with a anemometer. So the last test we're going to do is with a 3x5 card. I don't have a 3x5 card, so what I did is I just took a piece of paper and folded it in half, and that's what we're going to use. And so we're going to start the engine up. What we're going to do is we're going to take the oil filler cap off, and we're going to place this piece of paper over the oil filler cap. And there should be enough vacuum in the crankcase in order to pull that piece of paper down and hold it on there. And then the next test we're going to do is we're going to pull the PCV valve out of the valve cover, and we're going to snap our finger over the top of the PCV valve, and you should hear the PCV valve snapping back and forth in there, the little valve inside. And so those are the two tests we'll do right now. So I'm going to start the engine. And I'm going to remove the oil filler cap. And it's kind of hard to pull off because you've got vacuum inside there. And put my piece of paper over there, and if you see, it holds the piece of paper in place. And just to prove that, pull the PCV valve out. You see the paper fall? So there is vacuum, PCV is working. So we'll put that cap back on there. And then the other test that we're going to do is a real simple one. Can you hear how that clicks? That's the other test to make sure that the valve inside that PCV valve is working. And that's how you test an a PCV valve.